あ、いいか。
Good day everyone, so hope you're all doing really well. In today's video I want to show you how to use the Herrscher of Rebirth as a support and as a DPS right here in the Nirvana Abyss, as well as some of the considerations that you need to keep in mind when playing either one or the other playstyle. So as you can see in the background, we're doing our competitive run with Dreamweaver being our main DPS and obviously the Herrscher of Rebirth as our support. I think what makes her so good in contrast to the Herrscher of Sentience is this idea that you can significantly extend the rotations and uptime on your buffs, and this allows you to cover 2 ult cycles on your DPS here, Dreamweaver, as well as weave in a bit of extra time for your supports to do their thing. So as you can notice there on the screen, there's a little timer that ticks down 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, and boom, it's now been refreshed back up to 16, and that is exactly what makes the Herrscher of Rebirth so good. We didn't need to recast her ult, we simply refreshed the impair, and that allows us to do a massive amount of damage, whilst obviously the Dewy Twilight effect is active in the background, and with 2 seconds on the buff still active, we can just easily finish off the enemy. This is what makes the Herrscher of Rebirth from a support perspective so good. And I think once you see now how we're going to play her as a DPS with the Herrscher of Sentience, how sluggish everything is really gonna feel. So there we go, that was the competitive run. So let's get into the DPS Zila run right here. So obviously we're just gonna do normal Herrscher of Sentience things, and what you'll notice is that we're gonna now stick to the usual formulaic playstyle, but we're not really gonna have a lot of breathing room. So we obviously ult there with number 17, ult with the Herrscher of Sentience, go here now to the Herrscher of Rebirth, and as you can see, we're now going to be in our damage phase. It's very important to ult right here in the beginning, because you want the, I think, Withering Fissure effect, whatever it's called, you want it on the enemies, because that will allow you to get more buffs for your DPS mode. And obviously one of the cool things is against multiple enemies you can use her ult at 0 cost and refresh it. But immediately you'll now notice a big problem here in the background. We don't have any buffs, so the damage we're doing to the enemy is pretty negligible, and that is precisely what I meant by everything being sluggish. So here with the Herrscher of Sentience, we now have to go back and regain her ult. So there we go, get the SP back up, we're going to trigger her ult, and now we'll be able to go through the next cycle. You can see these are very definite cycles, but the one problem is that we have the debuffs from number 17 also starting to run out as well. So this is kind of a waste of her support potential, precisely because of what the Herrscher of Rebirth gives us, Herrscher of Sentience gives us, my bad. And yeah, you can see here we have just enough time to put in a big charge attack, and there we go, the Herrscher of Sentience buff is gone, and we now have to go once again here to number 17 to block the shield from regenerating, do a quick little impair here with the Herrscher of Sentience, back to the Herrscher of Rebirth, and now we can close out this fight. Certainly not as smooth as the support run, but still I think relatively decent from a competitive perspective. Obviously this is not an optimized run, this is just more for showcasing to you guys, but that is generally what happens. The contrast between the 2 playstyles is so clear, in that it's not about the Herrscher of Rebirth, it's all about your support, the Herrscher of Sentience, just not being able to give you that uptime. And that is exactly why I've decided to put in as well Dreamweaver's run here with the Herrscher of Sentience, because you'll notice the contrast, and the contrast is so obvious. So what's now going to happen is, for every ult cycle with the Herrscher of Sentience, we'll only have 1 cycle here with Dreamweaver. And you'll also note that if you compare this to the earlier run that I gave, that we're doing quite a bit less damage. Well, not quite a bit, but you can tell that there's a damage, or a significant difference in damage we're doing, and that's just precisely because we don't have as many buffs as the Herrscher of Rebirth will give us. And now we're just going to do the normal things. We're just going to reduce the enemy shield, there we go, try and build up again some SP. So this is very familiar. There's a clear ult cycle, you need to follow the cycle, and in my opinion this allows for there's less room for micro optimizations with the Herrscher of Sentience, whereas with the Herrscher of Rebirth I can do all manner of small little technical things if you go back and watch the run, and that's what makes it so much more fun. You have more leeway, you've got more room to breathe and to optimize, and from a competitive perspective that's just way more fun and refreshing to me. But in any case, the buff has run out, so now we have to go to number 17. This will once again waste a bit of time. We now have to refresh the impair. You can see here this is very similar to what we had with the Herrscher of Rebirth, despite the fact that she actually has, I think, a type advantage against the enemy, whereas Dreamweaver here obviously is type neutral, but that just shows you the difference between a support DPS hybrid and a pure like DPS. But in any case, that's going to be it for this little bit of a showcase. Once again, this is not going to be an optimized run, so don't take too much out of it, but just the fact that I think the big takeaway from this video is that instead of running through alt cycles, you're extending your rotations with the Herrscher of Rebirth, and that ultimately is just going to give you a much better competitive score. So right here in the Nirvana Abyss, I don't think you'll be able to get top 100 anymore with Dreamweaver unless you've got like some really strong account, unless you run Dreamweaver with the Herrscher of Rebirth. As you can see here are some of the top scores, and this means that if I didn't have the Herrscher of Rebirth, I'd probably be battling quite a bit and optimizing to get to this level. But in any case, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching.